Assalamualaikum. We are from Group 9. We will present on the ethical issue on stem cell research, specifically Hu Suk-hwang case in Korea based on the Islamic and legal perspective. A quick summary. In October 2009, Hu Suk-hwang, a professor at Seoul National University, was sentenced for 2 years in prison for embezzling money and bioethics violation for the purpose of the research. Back in 2005, this research was published and the success in cloning the first human embryo and drove 11 stem cell lines from it. In 2006, a year after that, an investigation was done on this research after Huang admitted falsifying the data, and the result revealed that Huang used the human eggs more than being told and paid for the egg donor. Moreover, he also forced two of his researchers to donate the eggs for the research, and some of the egg donors were gaining benefits from their donation. Huang used the funds from two companies in this research to pay for the egg donor, and this action was violating the country's bioethic law. So, the objective of our presentation are to investigate the case of Ho Suk Hwang in the area of stem cell research, to learn about the country's bioethic law regarding the buying of human eggs, to learn on the Islamic perspective regarding the bioethics violation on human eggs, and lastly, to discover the available alternatives that can be implemented in this research study.
So the major issues are he actually falsifying data to obtain research funding from two companies, but he was not being punished by court as the court mentioned that these companies gave funding without expecting benefits. Secondly, he was guilty of buying human eggs in violation of the country's bioethics, and he also embezzling 830 million won of government money. He actually claimed that the 11 donated eggs were done voluntarily, but the truth is he paid for it, and there were more than 11 eggs were being used for his research. Some of the egg donors were also not being informed about the risk and the purpose of his research. Third, the hospital also collected the donated eggs using informal informed consent, and they did not use any additional informed consent for second donation. This basically means that some ovaries were removed without consent. In addition, donation of oocyte, especially paid donors, were considered as unethical because it can cause pressure to poor women as they desperately need money.
Okay, for legal perspective, the legislation of the Bioethics and Safety Act 2005 was initiated by the debate about the ethics of Hwang Woo-sok research. So the Korean National Bioethics Board and Institutional Bioethics Board are grounded on this act. So the stem cell research, human genetic research, and other research that use human embryo are under the regulation of this act. So the bioethics law strictly prohibiting reproductive cloning under any circumstances and subject to criminal sanction up until 10 years in prison. According to the law, the creation of the embryos for purposes other than infertility treatment is prohibited. However, government will approve limited research on somatic nuclear transfer based on the guidelines drawn up by the National Ethics Committee. At the international level, the Universal Declaration on the Human Genome and Human Rights was adopted, and it is the first international instrument to condemn human reproductive cloning as a practice against human dignity, as stated in the Article 11. So in medical research on human subjects, considerations related to the well-being of the human subject should take precedence over the interests of science and society. So the research protocol should always contain a statement of ethical consideration involved and should indicate that there is compliance with the principle enunciated in the Declaration of the Helsinki.
Next, the Islamic perspective on bioethics violation in stem cell research. As a Muslim professional, it is important to be diligent and strive to comply with Sharia law when making any ethical decisions in all aspects of life. Any ethical issues must be deliberated from the Maqasid al-Sharia perspective, whereby any decision should be consistent with the objective of Sharia, which is to secure benefit to humankind and prevent harm. Among the five principles mentioned, Huang's actions on embezzling money for self-benefits and obtaining human eggs without consent are against the objective of preservation of property. Thus, it is considered as unethical. Also, the health risk of the egg donors was not informed by his team. Thus, this is against the preservation of life of the donors as it may cause harm if they were not well treated after several donations. Next, as a medical scientist professional, we are expected to treat patients in doing research in a dignified manner. Wang was alleged for falsifying data for research funding, but he was then found guilty of buying human eggs in violations with the country's bioethics. This shows the behavior of the scientists implied lack of integrity. In Islam, the elements of integrity is a virtue with a high degree in the sight of Allah. Therefore, we are encouraged to reflect on these values on our daily activities, including our job, and as a scientist, it is important to be ethical by practicing honesty.
Next, we move to the alternative and recommendations of this case. First, induce pluripotent stem cells as alternative towards embryonic stem cells. It is generated by taking somatic cell from a person and then introducing it into the cell which able to revert back into an embryonic-like pluripotent state. iPS cells also do not result in any death of embryo and do not require fertilized egg, and also already successfully used to study the fundamental aspect of development and disease. Next, professional practice in obtaining informed consent. Researcher is advisable to use an easy language with list of scientific terms, while explanation about the pros and cons of the research and the agreement should be made without inappropriate influences. Next is enforce a strong guideline on the egg broker agency. A strong professional guideline and government regulations need to be established and enforce higher standard for the agency to follow regarding the appropriate informed consent concerning the risks and benefit involved and for the quality control. Lastly, enhancing understanding among the public at large about what egg donations entail may also be helpful for them to know the risk of egg donation before simply agree with it.
Government should enforce strict policy and regulations against the trading of the human eggs and sperm, and advocacy on the risk of the post-oocyte retrieval procedure should also be done by the government to provide the community, especially women, with some knowledge as a basis for their judgment before taking part in any experiments that may require the use of the human eggs. The next one is the implementation of the strict policy regarding the minimum age of the research participant, and also the strict supervisions on the subject recruitment should also be done to ensure the autonomy of the participants are well preserved and to prevent any issues regarding the exploitations of the human rights.
So in conclusion, the action taken by Huang and also his team was unethical because they performed many research misconduct in conducting a study on stem cell by using purchased human egg. They also had against the principle of Bellman reports as well Makasih al-Sharia by not informing the purpose of the study and the health risks to the egg donors. The falsifying data and embezzling the government money showed that they do not have a characteristic of professional medical researcher. Therefore, to avoid the recurrence of this research misconduct, a strict and firm research misconduct law should be implemented in universal. As a take-home message, in Surah An-Anfal, verse 27, Allah mentioned that, O believers, do not betray Allah and the messengers, nor betray your trust knowingly. It means that we should be trustworthy in our daily action because we know what is ethical and what is unethical to be done. Thank you.